By this time, I was making $3 to $5 every time I played, at either one of the coffee houses around, or another place over in St. Paul called the Purple Onion Pizza Parlour. Above Gray's, the crash pad was no more than an empty storage room, with a sink and a window looking into an alley. No closet or anything, toilet down the hall. I put a mattress on the floor, bought a used dresser, plugged in a hot plate on top of that, used the outside window ledge as a refrigerator when it got cold. I was sitting at the counter at Gray's one day. Winter had come early. Wind howled across the Central Avenue bridge outside, and a carpet of snow was beginning to form on the ground. Flo Kastner, who I'd known from one of the coffee houses, the Bastille, had come in and sat down beside me. Flo was an actress in the Drama Academy, an aspiring thespian, odd-looking but beautiful in a wacky way, had long red hair, was light-skinned, dressed in black from head to foot. She had an uptown but folksy demeanour, was a mystic and a transcendentalist, believed in the occult power of trees and things like that. She was also serious about reincarnation. We used to have strange conversations. In another life, I could have been you, she'd say. Yeah, but then I wouldn't have been the same person in that life. Yeah, that's right. Let's work on it. On this particular day, we were just sitting around talking, and she asked me if I'd ever heard of Woody Guthrie. I said sure. I'd heard of him on the Stinson records with Sonny Terry and Cisco Houston. Then she asked me if I'd ever heard him all by himself, on his own records. I couldn't remember having done that. Flo said that her brother Lynn had some of his records and that she'd take me over there to hear them. That Woody Guthrie was somebody that I should definitely get hip to. Something about this sounded important, and I became definitely interested. There wasn't much distance between the drugstore and her brother's house, maybe a half a mile or so. Her brother Lynn was an attorney for the city's social services, had thin, wispy hair, wore a bow tie and little James Joyce glasses. He had seen me and me him a couple of times throughout the summer. I had heard him play a few folk songs, but he never said much, and I never spoke to him. He had never invited me over to listen to anybody's records. He was at home when Flo brought me by. He said it was okay to look through his record collection, pulled out a few record albums of old 78s and said I should listen to these. One was the Spirituals to Swing concert at Carnegie Hall. This was a collection of 78s with Count Basie, Meade Lux Lewis, Joe Turner and Pete Johnson, Sister Rosetta Thorpe, among many others. The other collection was one that Flo had told me about. A Woody Guthrie set of about 12 double-sided 78 records. I put one on the turntable, and when the needle dropped, I was stunned. Didn't know if I was stoned or straight. What I heard was Woody Guthrie singing a whole lot of his own compositions, all by himself. Songs like Ludlow Massacre, 1913 Massacre, Jesus Christ, Pretty Boy Floyd, Hard Travelin', Jack Hammer John, Grand Coulee Dam, Pastures of Plenty, Talkin' Dust Bowl Blues, This Land Is Your Land. All these songs together, one after another, made my head spin. It made me want to gasp. It was like the land parted. I had heard Guthrie before, mainly just a song here and there, mostly things that he sang with other artists. I hadn't actually heard him, not in this earth-shattering kind of way. I couldn't believe it. Guthrie had such a grip on things. He was so poetic and tough and rhythmic. There was so much intensity, and his voice was like a stiletto. He was like none of the other singers I ever heard, and neither were his songs. His mannerisms, the way everything just rolled off his tongue, it all just about knocked me down. It was like the record player itself had just picked me up and flung me across the room. I was listening to his diction too. He had a perfected style of singing that it seemed like no one else had ever thought about. He would throw in the sound of the last letter of a word whenever he felt like it, and it would come like a punch. The songs themselves, his repertoire, were really beyond a category. They had the infinite sweep of humanity in them. Not one mediocre song in the bunch. Woody Guthrie tore everything in his path to pieces. For me, it was an epiphany, like some heavy anchor had just plunged into the waters of the harbour. That day, I listened all afternoon to Guthrie, as if in a trance, and I felt like I had discovered some essence of self-command, that I was in the internal pocket of the system, feeling more like myself than ever before. A voice in my head said, "So this is the game." I could sing all these songs, every single one of them, and they were all that I wanted to sing. It was like I had been in the dark, and someone had turned on the main switch of a lightning conductor. A great curiosity respecting the man had also seized me, and I had to find out who Woody Guthrie was. It didn't take me long. Dave Whittaker, one of the Svengali-type beats on the scene, happened to have Woody's autobiography, Bound for Glory, and he lent it to me. I went through it from cover to cover like a hurricane, totally focused on every word, and the book sang out to me like the radio. Guthrie writes like the whirlwind, and you get tripped out on the sound of the words alone. Pick up the book anywhere, turn to any page, and he hits the ground running. Who is he? He's a hustling ex-sign painter from Oklahoma, an anti-materialist who grew up in the Depression and Dust Bowl days, migrated west, had a tragic childhood, a lot of fire in his life, figuratively and literally. He's a singing cowboy, but he's more than a singing cowboy. Woody's got a fierce, poetic soul, the poet of hard-crust sod and gumbo mud. Guthrie divides the world between those who work and those who don't, and is interested in the liberation of the human race, and wants to create a world worth living in. Bound for Glory is a hell of a book. It's huge, almost too big. His songs are something else, though, and even if you've never read the book, you'd know who he was through his songs. For me, his songs made everything else come to a screeching halt. I decided then and there to sing nothing but Guthrie songs. It's almost like I didn't have any choice. I liked my repertoire the way it was, stuff like Cornbread, Meat and Molasses, Betty and Dupree, Pick a Bale of Cotton, but I'd have to put it all on the back burner for a while. Didn't know if I'd ever get back to it. Through his compositions, my view of the world was coming sharply into focus. I said to myself I was going to be Guthrie's greatest disciple. It seemed like a worthy thing. I even seemed to be related to him, even from a distance, and having never seen the man, I could perceive his face with a clearness. He looks not unlike my father in my father's early days. I knew little about Woody. I wasn't even sure if he was alive anymore. The book makes it seem like he was a character from the old past. Whittaker, though, had got me up to date on him, that he was in ill health somewhere in the East, and I pondered that. During the next few weeks, I went back a few times to Lynn's house to listen to those records. He was the only one who seemed to have so many of them. One by one, I began singing them all, felt connected to these songs on every level. They were cosmic. One thing for sure, Woody Guthrie had never seen nor heard of me, but it felt like he was saying, "I'll be going away, but I'm leaving this job in your hands. I know I can count on you." Now that I had crossed the divide, I was head over heels in singing nothing but Guthrie songs, at house parties, in the coffee houses, street singing, with Koana, not with Koana. If I had a shower, I would have sung them in there too. There were a lot of them, and outside of the main ones, not easily to be found. There were no reissues of the older records, there were only the original ones. But I would move heaven and earth to find them, even went to the Minneapolis Public Library, to the Folkways section. Public libraries were the one place, for some reason, that had most of the Folkways records. I'd always be checking the repertoires of every out-of-town performer who came through to see what Guthrie songs they knew that I didn't, and I was beginning to feel the phenomenal scope of Woody's songs, the Sacco and Van Zetti ballads, Dust Bowl and children's songs, Grand Coulee Dam songs, his rugged heartbreak love ballads. Each one seemed like a towering tall building with a variety of scenarios, all appropriate for different situations. Woody made each word count. He painted with words. That, along with his stylized type singing, the way he phrased the dusty, cowpoke, deadpan, but amazingly serious and melodic sense of delivery, was like a buzzsaw in my brain, and I tried to emulate it any way I could. A lot of folks might have thought of Woody's songs as backward-dated, but not me. I felt they were totally in the moment, current, and even forecasted things to come. I felt anything but like the young punk folk singer who had just begun out of nowhere 6 months previously. It felt more like I had instantly risen up from a non-commissioned volunteer to an honourable knight, stripes and gold stars. Woody's songs were having that big an effect on me, an influence on every move I made, what I ate and how I dressed, who I wanted to know, who I didn't. In the late 50s and early 60s, teenage rebellion was beginning to make noise, but that scene hadn't appealed to me, not in a wholehearted way. It had no organised shape. The rebel without a cause thing wasn't hands-on enough. Even a lost cause, I thought, would be better than no cause. To the beats, the devil was bourgeois conventionality, social artificiality, and the man in the grey flannel suit. Folk songs automatically went up against the grain of all these things, and Woody's songs even went against that. In comparison, everything else seemed one-dimensional. The folk and blues tunes had already given me my proper concept of culture, and now with Guthrie's songs my heart and mind had been sent into another cosmological place of that culture entirely. All the other cultures of the world were fine, but as far as I was concerned, mine, the one I was born into, did the work of them all, and Guthrie's songs even went further.